I am Araceli, a wealth advisor, real estate investor in the United States and Canada, and creator of Wealthy Women in Real Estate. Every week, I meet with Colette, a real estate broker and a real estate investor in Canada. We come together to talk about all things real estate investing and how to increase your wealth. Join us. Welcome everyone. This is Araceli, transition wealth advisor and real estate investor in the US and Canada. And in my weekly chat with Colette, we have a really good presentation actually that Colette is going to do today. So Colette, can you introduce yourself and tell us what the presentation is about?
Of course. Hi everybody. My name is Colette Rava. I am a residential real estate broker in the GTA West. I like to help buyers and sellers and people who are looking at investment properties. That's why Araceli and I love to do the show, because we like to talk about real estate and making money and how finances work all together.
Yeah.
I always try and say it a little bit different. So
yeah, no, this is good.
Keep the excitement up. So today I have a little presentation because I do a monthly workshop, and this is just a little portion to give you a taste of what that's about. Just to look at real estate a little bit differently, because when people think about investing in property, they might not think of being a landlord, or they might not think I can be a silent investor. So that's not what we're going to talk about today. But I do have three small tips on how to look at real estate investing differently. So, would you like me to begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So, welcome to my little presentation. Woohoo! So, 3 ways to think differently when investing in real estate. I'd like to talk about it because I find a lot of people, the first question I get is, I have this much money, what do I do with it? So, I don't like thinking that way. So, again, this is about me. I am a full-service real estate broker in the GTA of 8 years. I do help landlords all the time put really good leases together and get really good tenants in. I not only help long-term tenants, but also short-term people who have Airbnbs or short-term like an STA or Airbnb. If you don't know what an STA is, it stands for short-term accommodation. Sometimes you'll hear short-term rental. So that's what the little acronym stands for. My background, as you know, is in renovating, interior decorating. I love upcycling furniture. That's my own personal thing. I love gardening. I have pets. I have kids. So full life, every action all the time. So, but I do run my business. I love my real estate business. I love my tenants that I have in my own income properties. And that's life. That's the way life works for me. So what I like to tell my clients is think differently when you want a residential property. We're just talking residential today about income properties. So number 1 tip, really treat it like a business. Even if you're going to be a silent investor, you have to think about how the structure of the property is going to be. You want to make sure the paperwork is right, and if you're a silent investor, to make sure you're going to get your money back, how much you're going to get back, all that stuff. It sounds pretty simple and obvious, but you would be surprised at how many people think, oh, I'm just going to do it this way, and you know, whatever, I'm going to make a couple bucks, and that's life. No, no, no. Please think about it. The way that you might not be able to, or you could still think of it as a business, if you even rent your basement, let's say for an example, make sure you have all of your accounts separate than your personal account. So whatever money comes in, whatever rent comes in, make sure that's in a separate account, because when somebody pays you first and last month's rent, let's say, you have to be able to find that amount. And if, let's say, they stay for 2 or 3 years and the rent increases, you have to go back to the tenant to say, hey, every year to pad the last month's rent. Sorry, the dog is barking. You can hear that. You have to pad that last month's rent to be accurate with the market rent of that year. So keep that in mind. And that's a really small thing. The other thing too, if you hire anyone, handyman, to do any repairs, you want to write that off. So make sure you have all that paperwork. See, Araceli's nodding. She knows everything touches money. You write down and write off whatever you can, because it is a business. Revisit the plan every year as well. People forget. They're like, oh, what did I do about that? Go look at your PIC. Do a business plan and revisit it every year. So generally speaking, I'm sure we could talk about just this tip alone of how to structure, but even if it's a basement apartment, treat it like a business. Let's see, page 2, or how do I get to page 2? It doesn't want to go. Doesn't want to go. Wants to stay on tip 1. It was such a good tip. So tip number 2, exit strategy. Do you think this way when you look at income properties? I'm asking.
Do I? Yeah, of course. So this is actually start with the end in mind, always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's because you want to know how do I exit? Like, am I going to retire? Is this going to be something that I'm going to have till the end of time? Am I going to let my kids inherit it? So really thinking about an exit strategy. The one thing that I've seen over the last year, as you know, we've talked about this before, is this mass exodus of people selling their properties because the prices outweigh how much they can earn from the property in the next 5 or 10 years. So if you can get $1 million selling, let's just say the house is worth $1 million now, it's going to take you more than 10 years to earn that, to have a renter in there. And if you've paid off the property and you're going to have $1 million in your hand, people sell their property. So you have to keep that in mind before you even start. So think about that. Say, okay, once the property hits, let's say $1 million in this case, I'm going to sell. I can't earn $1 million in the next 10, 20 years. Not worth it. It's better for me to sell it now. I'll take my $1 million and reinvest it somewhere else.
Yeah, but this is also, Colette, I just wanted to interrupt you there. Depending on the plan that you have created, remember the tip number 1, have a plan. If you decided that you're buying this investment property to supplement maybe your retirement income, it could be, right? So how long are you going to be retired? And also you need to plan about taxes and how you're going to will this property to people and so on. So think about that. But if you have it as a short-term, just to keep it for maybe a couple years and then turn around and buy another property, then that's your plan. So whatever it is,
exactly.
Just go.
And that's another example, is to leverage one property to buy another. So once, let's say it hits $1 million, instead of selling it, you go back to the bank and refinance to say, hey, I would like you to take a look at my property, tell me how much I can borrow against it. And if they say, well, now it's worth $1 million, you can borrow, let's say 80% loan to value. You get this money that you can borrow from the bank, buy another property, and increase this whole idea of your portfolio, your growth of your income that's coming in. And then that way they all work together for you to actually retire and have this income coming in, and you don't really even have to sell anything. So all these things, you need the experts. You need to talk to your experts like Araceli to say, what do I do in this case? Talk to your accountant, talk to me. If you don't know how much it's worth, all these things, use the people that are professionals around you to give you advice. And it's really up to you what you want to do if you don't have that exit strategy in mind, or when to do it. So that's the other thing too. Maybe it's not the time. Maybe the property hasn't grown as much as you want it to. And I love this one. Tip number 3 is one of my, well, it's pretty much it is my favorite. To think backwards. So it's sort of like an exit strategy, but also when it comes to tenants. So figure out who your avatar will be before you buy the property. Because let's say you have $1 million to buy a property. What kind of tenant do you want to attract? That should be discussed before you even find a property. Let's say you are very hands-on. You want to know who's buying your neighbor's house. Your neighbor's house is for sale. You want to make an offer. You have control who's going to move in next door. That's one example. Let's say you love students. You really want to have students and to support them. And maybe you have a child that's going to university, so you buy in that university town. They live for free. You have other students go and move in, and you can have it for years and years, or you sell it when your kid has graduated. Hopefully they'll graduate, not just stay there forever. So those are all the things. So I'm gonna break it down even further, because I really like to give examples of real-time clients that I've had that they have a very specific thing in mind what they want to do, and they have used that that kind of mindset to think, okay, I want to know what kind of tenant I have an idea of what kind of tenant I want before I buy a property. So let's do it this way. So they have a very clear vision. It's manifesting, if you want to call it that, or if you want to call it like the secret, or the you really have your vision in place before you decide. So you should have it for your own personal property too.
The one thing that I can say about this is when you have your entire focus in what you want, it is amazing how things start lining up for you to attract that. But if you have a very broad idea, oh, I just want a person, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the right person. Because I tell you, before I started doing that about who I wanted, I didn't know who I was supposed to have in an apartment, and said, okay, whatever application comes in, the one that looks the best, that I think they're gonna pay. But it's not always like that, especially if you have, like I have a triplex, so you gotta ensure that all of the tenants get along well, because people hear things, and some people, they just don't get along with each other. So it is important.
Right, absolutely. And the thing too, like when you have, so I like to call it an avatar, or your ideal tenant. So when you have that vision in your head, you will, exactly what you said, you'll be things will move much quicker. You'll have more focus. You'll be much clearer on your path. So I really like this idea. I really like, so I'll go through the examples so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I had a client, she came to me, she said, I'm looking for a house for myself, but I do need an extra source of income. Let's find a house that has a second suite. So we were looking for months. Really, there was one house that was very close, but it had a basement, obviously, but it did not have a second entrance. It didn't have sort of the setup. So, and her budget wasn't huge either. So we found her a house for her and her kids. She's separated. Moved to a whole different city, and she used the money from her sale of her house to put the down payment on, but she still wanted to have somebody to help her with that, the monthly payments. So she really had this in mind. I want an older woman, somebody who's quiet, somebody who is respectful of the space, someone who doesn't have crazy parties, somebody who doesn't have crazy smells, that doesn't bake all day and do laundry all day, like all these crazy things that you think it's not a big deal. Like that's really who she is. She's working all day, she's out, she comes home, she rests, she doesn't entertain a lot. So she wanted somebody very like-minded, and that's exactly who she got, an older woman who she was retired, but she had this lump sum from the sale of her house. She wanted to be closer to her daughter and her grandkids. So she's really out of the house pretty much all day, every day, helping her daughter. She eats at her daughter's house. She occasionally will cook for herself. But really very quiet person, lovely woman. They're still together. Can I say it that way? They still live together. It's been maybe about 4 or 5 years, actually maybe even longer than that, but they seem to be very symbiotic. So that's what I'm talking about. Whether you live in the house yourself, or like Araceli was saying, it's a triplex, or you really want those tenants to get along, or even if you have a short-term accommodation. So that's coming up. My second example is a suburban bungalow. The landlord is very hands-off. He really could care less. He has a property manager that he trusts, and he says, you do whatever, but I listed it, and I was talking to the property manager. I got the story from them. The landlord, all he really cared about was somebody that would respect the house, that they had enough income, and that they had dual income, because if one person loses their job, there's also, and the rent in this house particularly is a little bit higher. So really he wanted to make sure that they not only hit the 30% threshold. What I mean by that is you should get a tenant that makes at least a third goes to rent. Does that make sense? Am I saying it right? So obviously these people make way more than the rent. They can absolutely cover it. Each one of them can cover it on their own. That's how much they're earning. So basically what his idea was, it's a bungalow in the suburbs. So who am I going to get? I'm going to get a family, possibly 2 parents that both work, possibly 1 or 2 kids. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. What he got was a gay couple, and they both make very good income, but they have an older parent. One of them has an older parent that has to move in. The bungalow works for them. We had to put in a shower bar for the mom to be able to get in and out of the tub. But basically, he's so happy to have this couple in because they're both earning a lot of money, and he thinks that they're not going to stick around. The house will be torn down in between 5 and 7 years. So I have to say to the possible tenants, this is what's going to happen. This is the landlord's exit strategy, to go back to the other tip. And the tenants also have an exit strategy. I asked the tenants, how long do you think you're going to stay? And they say, well, we'll stay until either the mom has passed or the landlord is tearing down the house. So whoever outlives the other, that's their exit strategy. And they are very prepared to retire. They're going to move to one of their properties. They're property owners as well. They're landlords. So they could either go back to their properties outside of the country and move there and retire. So it works out, again, serendipitously. So it's such a nice thing when that happens. And that's only because the landlord has that in their minds first. So third example is the STA, short-term accommodation, vacation property. The avatar is themselves and their family. They're the buyers. They wanted a well-known vacation spot, so people will come and want a vacation in that spot when they're not using it themselves. They wanted a property that's big enough to host their own family, and a property that is in the area that they might want to retire to. So this is a very, very specific avatar. So and also a big yard in this possibly secondary building to do some other storage or something like that. What they got was a property that's 2 hours away, a well-known vacation destination in Prince Edward County in this case. Quiet town, very quiet. 4-bedroom, 2-bath property, large kitchen, as you can see. This is the renovation. The only issue with this is to be a little bit flexible. It was not ready to go. That could be your avatar though. I want a move-in turnkey property. You can absolutely put that on your avatar. You don't have to see all the fixer-uppers then. See how that works? Like, you're not interested in doing any or putting any money in. That wouldn't work for this property, wouldn't work for you. In this case, it was absolutely the right property because that person is handy and wanted a big project, and that's what they got. And as you might have guessed, this is my vacation property. I am the hardest client I've ever had to please. It took me 4 years, and this is the thing too, that the one thing that you can't say it's going to happen overnight. These things, if you really are clear on what you want, and it only took me 4 years because I wasn't clear on what I wanted. So once I got clear, I got very specific about what I was looking for. It happened pretty much overnight. I went to go see this property and I think 4 other properties in one day. I made an offer on this property, I believe the next day. I got it. I changed my mind because I was terrified. Then I went back and I said, I'm being ridiculous, please accept my offer. And then they took it, and I haven't looked back since. That's been 3.5 years now. So I love the property. It's, again, I love using the word serendipitously because this is really everything that I could imagine. It's not perfect by any means, but it was perfect for me at the time. So that's my third example. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something. If you do want to learn more, I do have our YouTube, obviously our YouTube channel. I have a newsletter if you want to learn anything monthly. It's not invasive. I'm not upselling anything. And I always have a workshop if you want more information that will give you more tips and a lot more information. And it's a free workshop as well online. So contact me anytime if you want to have a coffee. I love coffee.
That's great, Colette. Thank you for putting this together. So just to recap for everybody, so there's 3 ways to think differently about real estate investing. The first one is treat it like a business, no matter how small it is, even if you have renting a room in your house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Number 2,
money separate.
Yeah. Number 2, think exit before entering. So how long do you think you're going to have the property? And remember, this is just when you're getting it, because things can change,
Right.
It can change along the way, but it is a reference for you to have that, to know that you're going to have the property for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Right.
I don't know, etc. Right? And the last one is think backwards when it comes down to tenants, and have that avatar very clear in your mind, especially if you are living in the house, or if you're not living in the house and it is a multifamily. Make sure that the people are going to get along, because, and I tell you, for my own experience, I had a person that was single in the main floor, and there was a lady that had 4 children, and they were small children. So it was a big to-do. I had him on the phone all the time. The tenants go to bed really late, and the baby is crying, and I don't have this, and I'm getting late, and the baby is crying. Oh dear. So until they both move, and I said, no, I need to have somebody that is older, that they're not going to be partying, that the kids are running around, especially in the top floor. And I got it. And I got an older couple that has their son, which is older, that he had a disability, but he's not running around anywhere. So that was perfect. And ever since, I've never had any problems. So
well, and that's it. Like, unless you have one whole house that you're renting to one family, that's different. But when you have a shared space, either with yourself or with other people, the 2 things that you always have to keep in mind are noise and smells. And those are things that people do not think about until you're in that situation where you're like, oh my gosh, I can hear everything, I can smell everything. It's really, if you've ever shared a house with anyone, even in an apartment, like apartment buildings, even though they're built concrete and they're strong and very soundproof, you still hear stuff. So there's always air gaps, there's always ventilation, there's always things you have to consider. So when you really think of, and you hit it right on the head, if you have tenants that are very similar in their either their lifestyle, or if I've heard people too. There's somebody that moves in and they're a shift worker and they come home at 2 o'clock in the morning,
exactly,
or even 6 a.m. and they start banging around in pots and pans and things like that. Like, that really is disruptive to other people and their lifestyle. So you have to ask those questions when you really look at tenants and interview. And sometimes they'll lie. I can't say tenants don't lie. They do. And sometimes their lifestyle changes too. Mm-hmm. So be as accurate as you can, be as specific as you can.
Yes.
So, and you know what? Things happen too, right? Like, things change. So
and I think I would do one more, which is just to be flexible, because even though you have a plan of action, if something changes with you, or changes with the tenants, or changes with the economy, I don't know. There's many things that could change along the way,
of course,
and that you don't foresee.
And you might have to change your avatar too, because if you say something that maybe is a little unrealistic, like, I only want the king of Siam to move in, and there's no way that he'll ever move in, you might have to adjust a little bit.
Yes.
So be a little flexible. That's a very good very good point too.
Yeah, so this is all we have for you today, and this is great conversation, because I think when people are just trying to get into real estate, sometimes they don't see how many things they need to think about, and I think this will kind of get you started, at least thinking about it. So
yeah, absolutely. And you know what, we're all phone call away, so if you
yeah,
ever need to talk to
absolutely.
one of us.
So we'll see you next week, and remember, keep the comments and also the questions so we can answer them for you here. Okay,
Thanks for
we'll see
joining
you.
us.
Colette.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for being here on the show. Please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when there are more shows available. And if you would like to have more information on how to start investing in real estate, please visit my website at www.aracelihernandez.com. Thank you.